Did we just watch the Dallas Cowboys first round pick play on Thursday night? We'll discuss that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we're going to actually break down the college football playoffs a little bit to talk about some potential Dallas Cowboys draft news. We'll get to another Mike McCarthy update. I hesitate to even say the word update, but you'll know what I mean when we get there. Let's talk about that Penn State game that we saw last night. Penn State, Notre Dame. Notre Dame won at the end. Did we see the Cowboys' first-round pick on display on Thursday night?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly possible. I think, and just so everyone doesn't get confused, I don't know that necessarily means a certain pass rusher who wears the same number as our certain pass rusher who, man, did he have an incredible game last night? That, like, first of all, we got to talk about.
Let's talk about Abdul first, because I think he's got a really good chance to be the first pick in this class.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's certainly made his case for being top 5. I think he was the most dominant force of the game last night. Just absolutely, just taking it over when he was in the game. When he left the game is when you started to see Notre Dame start to kind of finally get some footing in the game and start to kind of change things. Once he I think he had a bum shoulder at a certain point that he was kind of dealing.
He almost
with.
didn't play this game because of his shoulder.
And he was dominant. Like, he was just all everywhere, and just constantly disrupting, what little pass game Notre Dame had at any point. And just, at a certain point, I think Notre Dame kind of gave up trying to have any kind of, intermediate. Not that Notre Dame has a ton of intermediate passing game to begin with, but I think, just the idea of dropping back and trying to throw the ball became fruitless because Abdul was just wrecking everything, especially in the first half. But he's not necessarily the guy that I think that we're talking about as the Cowboys pick, because I don't think that he lasts to 12, right? I think the guy that we're talking about is Penn State tight end Tyler Warren, who is a freak of nature. You watched it last night, and he didn't have like eye-popping numbers necessarily last night, but the things he did on the field were certainly eye-opening. And I think you and I pointed out specifically to me that the one thing, he had several different plays throughout the game, but the thing that really kind of showed off some of the athleticism that we saw from him was it a direct snap or a jet sweep?
It was a direct snap. Yep.
Yeah, I think they've been doing this a couple different times throughout the year with him, which is, again, he's over 6 feet tall. It's pretty rare to see these bigger tight ends kind of take these direct snaps like this. But the athleticism he showed on that, the ability to kind of hesitate to let the play kind of play out, and then when there wasn't anything there, the fact that he was able to, from a dead stop in the backfield, create space and get to beat all the defenders to the corner and get upfield, like, my jaw fell to the floor. He is just an athlete, and he moves in a way that is really it almost creates a dissonance with you, because you look at his body and you're like, how is his body moving kind of in that kind of speed and quickness? It's pretty crazy to watch, and I certainly think if the Cowboys are at 12 and he falls to them, I mean, look, we've got a long way to go, but I mean, this is exactly the kind of offensive playmaker that I've been talking about that this offense needs.
So I know there are listeners out there listening right now shaking their heads like, Marcus, Landon, we cannot draft a tight end in the first round with our needs at running back, wide receiver, defensive tackle, corner. Explain why you would be open to the idea of drafting Warren at 12, because I do think for a lot of people, not only the positional value is kind of wonky, but they just have so many other needs. And I do think Jake Ferguson is a good player. They drafted Luke Schoonmaker in round 2. Why Tyler Warren?
Well, I think, look, I think you draft special players high, right? And he clearly is not just like a normal tight end. He clearly looks like he has a special element to especially the receiving part of his game. And I do think that, look, we have spent a lot on tight end, certainly. But I certainly think that you shouldn't poo-poo a guy if he's the best player that's available and he is going to be an improvement in your passing game. You don't just turn that away. And look, here's the other thing about wide receiver and running back. Running back especially, man, this class is crazy deep. And frankly, you just watch that game last night, and we'll talk about it in the next segment. Watch the game tonight. If you're looking for running backs, they're everywhere, right? Like starting level NFL running backs are 4 rounds deep in this class, at least, right? And frankly, wide receiver, I think, is another position that if you're looking for if you're willing to shop for a specific type, you're not looking for a number 1 alpha dog wide receiver necessarily. I think you get those guys in this draft, pretty deep into the draft as well. So, but if you're looking for a difference maker, a guy who can come in as a as a tight end, especially, but really at any position, those are pretty rare in this class, and they're going to get picked at the top. And if the last offensive playmaker that becomes available to the Cowboys is a tight end, I'm not saying no to someone like Tyler Warren just because Jake Ferguson had a pretty good season 2 years ago. Like that to me that's bad drafting, right? Like that, and I think that's where the Cowboys kind of fell into problems this year, right? Where over reliance on guys taking the next big step and thinking that has to happen and we have to create room for that. If Jake Ferguson wants to take a next step while Tyler Warren's on this offense, I don't have a problem with running the double dynamite 12 personnel, like and gashing teams that way. You find ways to make it work if you have a great player on your team.
Just wanted to give you some workout numbers. I know a couple people close to the Penn State situation. You guys have known that over the last couple of years. These are confirmed workout numbers on Tyler Warren during some spring workouts. So 6'0", 6'2", 254 pounds. At least this is what he was last year. 4.51 40-yard dash with a 7.04 3 cone. The jumps are going to be absolutely insane. I mean, this is not you look at someone like Jake Ferguson, who came out, who was like 6'4.5", 245 pounds, that ran a 4.8. You are getting a special athlete at the tight end position. And I asked somebody, hey, can you compare him to somebody that we've seen over the last 10, 15 years? And they said, our closest comp for him is Greg Olsen, who was a first-round pick coming out of Miami, who was a special athlete. Now, we didn't always see that in the NFL because of some of the teams he was on. But, man, like Greg Olsen, when he was at Miami, was an unreal player. I think you're getting something similar here.
Yeah, I mean, look, over 6'5" and basically a 7 flat 3 cone. Like, that's a dude who's a big guy who's getting real low and moving real well, right?
Well,
like
and you see that on the runs. Like, I can remember Cole Kmet coming out. I think it was a 2020 class. Might have been, 2020 class. And he ran a good 40 at like 265 pounds. But if you asked him to change directions, it was like asking the Titanic to move a little bit. Right? Like it took him forever. This guy, you could actually like run jet sweeps with him.
Right.
You can give him the football in the backfield, and he can sink his hips. To me, that's the real judge of athleticism. Like, can you move outside of just running in a straight line? He can.
As someone who's watched like I think 4 or 5 games of him this year so far, just casually watching Penn State, when you told me that those numbers before the show that he was 6'6", I mean, you saw my reaction. I was shocked. Like I really was. Like that was
massive.
Legitimately 3 inches taller than I expected. And I think that has everything to do with his pad level on the field, right? He plays lower to the ground than a guy who's 6'6", and that's a good thing, right? Like that means he can change direction quickly. I think the numbers that we just presented kind of bear that out, and it matches what's on tape, which again, anytime you get you see elite athleticism with your eyes and then you confirm elite athleticism with these numbers, pay attention. That's when the good stuff's happening. Don't poo-poo guys just because they play a position that you may have some strength in already. When you get rare players dropping to you, you got to take those rare players.
Here's my last take on Tyler Warren before we go on. It's a hot take. I don't think he's going to be available when the Cowboys pick at number 12 because this is a weaker draft. And I also think the play of Brock Bowers this year, who was named a first team All-Pro selection, is going to make these teams more open to drafting a tight end. And I look at the teams that are like right above Dallas, Carolina, New Orleans, San Francisco. Like San Francisco to me is like a perfect spot to draft him and have him play with Kittle for a year or two before he replaces him. I'll also say the Colts, who draft at 14 behind Dallas, I can see them moving up to try to get another playmaker in their offense. So I think when it's all said and done, Tyler Warren's going to be a top 10, top 11 player in this class.
Before we go into the next segment, I want to make sure we mention at least one or two other guys in this game that I thought were, potential Dallas Cowboys. Because honestly, I think the question you could have asked at the beginning of this segment and the beginning of the show is, did we see multiple Dallas Cowboys in that game? Because I think there is a good chance that, you see one of these running backs that came out of this class. We'll talk about, again, the running backs in the next game. But I think Nick Singleton really showed you last night. He's ready to – Penn State running back, that he's ready to play in the NFL. I really liked what I saw from him at different points. If they had been able to get that pass out just a little bit further to him and he would have scored that touchdown, I think we would have been singing his praises even more. But
I've got numbers on Nick Singleton as well.
Oh, let's hear it, please. Yes, that's great.
Again, it's a Penn State running back, so you just a default to assume that they're going to be ridiculously athletic. 6 foot, 226, 4.38 40.
Woo, that's flying, buddy. At 220. That's flying. Yeah. So, I mean,
226. So not even just 220, 226.
No, 226, like almost 230 pounds. Like, again, are you shocked? Anybody who's seen a Penn State running back knows that they're an athlete. I think what's good is that you also saw a lot of skill from this guy too as well. So, I think that there's several different guys on both the Notre Dame side and the Penn State side. If you haven't watched the game, go back and watch it. That could end up being Dallas Cowboys if the boards fall right.
Just to show you how sick this running back class is, most draft analysts right now don't have Nick Singleton in their top 7 running backs.
Yeah.
Which shows you, like, wait, get your running back in round 2, round 3. You'll be just fine. Let's talk about that Texas-Ohio State game that'll be played on Friday night. Which player should you be watching for the Dallas Cowboys? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes? Well, now that's a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you've got 1 or 20 forms, TurboTax experts give you their undivided attention while you get real-time updates on their progress so that you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger. You'll get the peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off your plate so that you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only on the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. We absolutely love PrizePicks. It's one of my favorite apps to play all season long. You guys have been hearing us talk about it all year. Well, now it's playoff time. And if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where PrizePicks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, PrizePicks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. And with PrizePicks, all you do is pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards, receiving touchdowns, rushing touchdowns for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds, whether you're looking for just a flex play to boost your payout or you want to cash out quickly. PrizePicks has got you covered. And with over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. We've got some really good games set up here in Wildcard Weekend. Go check out all of the projections available on PrizePicks. And we've got a special offer for Locked On Cowboy listeners. Download the app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Later, let's talk about this Ohio State-Texas game on Friday night, which should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Which players are you keeping an eye on?
Man, there's a ton in this game, right? Like, obviously, Ohio State is one of the most talented kind of individuals gathering in a team. It's about like just prospects for the draft. I think, Ohio State has finally kind of seemingly put together like the ability to recruit incredible athletes and players and then actually kind of morph it into something. It seems like they actually are a solid good team as well, which isn't always the case. Sometimes it feels like there's just a collection of very talented athletes and not necessarily a good football team. But I think these are actually two very good football teams that are going to be playing tonight at a high level. Let's start on the UT offense, Ohio State defense side of the ball, because I think that's where there might be the most interest for the Cowboys, at least early on, right? So I think some of the big matchups that you're going to be looking at are the two offensive linemen that are coming out in the draft for UT and the matchups that they're going to be facing, right? So you've got Cam Williams, big offensive tackle. He's still kind of dealing with a knee thing. I think it's a knee thing that he was kind of working through, if I'm not mistaken. But he's playing. He is playing. But I think last week he was dealing with a thing, and just kind of still recovering from that. He's going to have a really tough matchup this week against Jack Sawyer, who is a really, really good defensive end for the Ohio State, who's really turned it on. It feels like these last few weeks has become even more of a playmaker than I think you saw earlier in the season. Just really extremely disruptive. I think it's going to be a really great test for both of these guys.
I was going to call him a lunch pail, hard worker, gritty. No, I mean, he's a good player.
all those indicate he's a white guy. So but he is like, it's hard not to look at him in that Ohio State uniform and think, is he related to a Bosa, or is he,
he reminds me a little bit more like of Sam Hubbard, who came out of Ohio State. Like, he's not as twitchy as the Bosas, but he's still I think he's a starting NFL defensive end.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he definitely plays with his hair on fire all the time. He's not, you're right. He's not the same athlete as the Bosas. I think that's why those guys are, top 5, top 10 picks, right?
Sawyer's more of a second round guy.
Sawyer's like, maybe he sneaks into the bottom of the first round. It's kind of second round type guy, especially if he plays well in these games. So definitely some pairing to watch there. And then the other side of that is Kevin Banks as another kind of not as big, but a little bit more of a mover guy. On the offensive line. Both of these guys are going to be like tackles who will be considered at guards, probably, right? Like, especially I would say Cam Williams is one that might stay at right tackle, but I think both of these guys likely end up at guard. And Kevin Banks is going to be going against the other defensive end for the Ohio State, JT, and I'm Tuma Maloa, I think is how you say it.
Tuma Malalu, I believe. I don't know.
Okay.
JT on the other side. He's number 44. That's all you need to know.
That's right. And again, another guy, just I think they're very similar to Jack Sawyer, honestly, in the sense that he's a lunch pail guy, not necessarily super twitchy, but big, strong, and athletic enough that he gives most college offensive tackles a lot of problems. And then the one last pairing I wanted to mention actually, those were my two big things for that side of the ball. We'll talk about the kind of other side of the ball. Do you have anybody on the Texas?
The receivers, Marcus Gold, and Isaiah Bond. Now, Isaiah Bond has not had a great year, but man, he's fast, and he's somebody who I actually put in my second round of my latest mock draft for the Cowboys, because I know the numbers aren't good, but man, you just don't find guys with that type of speed very often. So we'll see if he gets more involved. But let's go on the other side of the ball, because you got the two running backs for Ohio State. And honestly, that's where my attention is. It's like Travion Henderson is one of my favorite backs in this class. Super athlete, but he's gotten banged up. There's an injury history there. But man, he's just so good.
Yeah, I mean, what it is that, and this is obviously selfish as I'm viewing this all through Cowboys lenses, right? Is that what it is he's so good, and he's so good at all the specific stuff that you would need if you re-signed Rico Dowdle as the other running back and you needed to pair him. Like, it's just like, oh, he's perfect as a pairing for the guy that we might potentially sign. So, yeah, I think that Trayvon Henderson is a guy. I mean, you just watch the speed, the way he glides to the second level. The ability as a pass protector, frankly, at times as a pass catcher. I just think that he has a lot of ability to kind of come in right away and be a difference maker as a alternate running back. I think some team might end up drafting him and make him running back one. I think he could totally handle that role just fine as well. I think he has that kind of talent. But I think if he was able to come to a team that, paired him with another veteran running back who is a solid presence, who just needs maybe a little bit of lightning to their thunder, I think Trayvon Henderson is about as good as you're going to get. And he's going to be a value wherever he gets picked, honestly.
We should mention the starting running back in this team, Quinshon Judkins, 5'11", 220. He's a little bit more of the in-between the tackles kind of guy that can make plays with his, long speed. Most draft analysts have him ahead of Trayvon Henderson, but he's another guy that I think could be a real target for Dallas in round 2.
Here's what I think. I think Judkins is a more skilled running back, which makes sense that he's ahead of Trayvon in that sense. I think that the difference is that his skill set is more common. His skill set is the more common running back that you can find kind of anywhere in the draft and frankly on the street in the NFL free agency. Trayvon's skill set is more rare and is harder to find, and he's good at it. So I think it's almost like a positional value argument, right? Except broken down inside of the running back position. I think that's why, to me, I would prefer Trayvon Henderson, because I do think that this skill set's a little bit more difficult to find, and it's more specifically what the Cowboys are looking for. But Judkins himself is an incredible prospect as well. And if the Cowboys decide to let Rico Dowdle go, then I think you put Judkins right on that list of guys that you would potentially draft a little bit in the middle rounds to be a part of a committee, maybe even the lead of your committee.
Last guy on Ohio State that I want to mention is Emeka Egbuka, who is a really good receiver. Listen to his PFF grades over the last 3 years. First, third, and then I believe 10th this year among all receivers. Like, he's just been a really good receiver for a long time, despite this seems like Ohio State always having a receiver opposite of him that's way better and more talented. I mean, every year.
At least one.
At least one.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple people on Twitter the last week or so start to mention Egbuka as like potentially wide receiver 1 in this class. Now, I'm not there yet. I think he's more of a late 1, early 2. But I think tonight, against one of the best secondaries in college football, if he has a really good game, I wouldn't be surprised to see that become a more common narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'm ready to do that. I mean, that kid from Arizona whose name I can never remember how to pronounce. Yeah. I mean, he is something else, dude.
Yeah.
So it would be tough to kind of put him above that. But listen, I mean, I think this is a guy that, I feel like you get one of these from Ohio State every few years, where Ohio State just has tons and tons and tons of talented wide receivers that come out, right? But there always is this guy, right, who starts as a freshman and still manages to get steal snaps away from these elite guys that are all about to leave to go to the draft in the NFL in the first round. And he has been that guy for the last 3 years, right? Like, we've been watching him, waiting for him to come out since he was a freshman, right? And it always seems to happen that when it gets to the senior year, it feels like the excitement has died down a little bit. Maybe we've been waiting too long. We forgot why we were excited about this guy. And I don't know that he's going to jump out of the gym testing wise. I think he's going to be a very solid tester, but maybe not, blow your eyes out sort of situation. But he's just so good at all the subtle aspects of playing wide receiver, especially from the slot. He just understands how to run all the routes that he's running so well with such subtlety. And he's just very smooth that I think it's going to translate very well to the NFL. I think he's going to be a useful receiver right away by whatever team drafts him.
Just to finish up here, he was on the field producing the same time Ohio State had Jackson Smith-Njigba, who went for 1,600 yards, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Marvin Harrison Jr. And he was able to be on the field with those 4 receivers. Pretty impressive. Just somebody to keep an eye on tonight. Go ahead. Yes.
We have to mention the best player maybe in college football who's also playing in this game, Jeremiah Smith. He's not eligible to
just watch him.
But guys, get your eyes on him because he's a freshman, and I'm not exaggerating. The best player in college football.
Absolutely.
Bar none. It's amazing.
All right, let's give a quick Mike McCarthy update, which we got from Tom Pelissaro. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That is $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. I really like Pittsburgh plus 9.5 if you want to bet on the spread this week. I also like the money line, just straight up. It was plus 400 on FanDuel this morning. Go check out all of the great lines and odds available over on FanDuel for Wild Card Weekend. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com. Make the playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's give a Mike McCarthy update because Cowboys still have not decided, I guess, what they're doing with their head coach. But here's what we got from Tom Pelissaro. After several days of discussions about the 2024 season in the future, Cowboys owner Jerry Jones and coach Mike McCarthy remain open to moving forward together, and the sides are expected to open talks today on a new contract. There have been no negotiations yet, and there's still other issues to work through. McCarthy's contract is set to expire. Otherwise, McCarthy would be free to pursue other opportunities. That's an update that really didn't give us too much of an update.
It's like the empty calories of updates, right? It's like, there is still a coaching situation in the Cowboys, and Mike McCarthy is still interested in taking it, and the Jerry Jones is interested in signing him, but nothing has changed. Like it's not much there. So it feels like, right now we're kind of in the middle of the classic public negotiations phase of this situation, right? Where there's a certain amount of leverage trying to be applied by either side, through the media, which I don't think applies here. I don't think it's going to work, right? Like, I just don't think, I think for me, like, the media leverage game is about trying to get fandom on your side. And I think that the Cowboys fandom is so pissed off at both of the sides of this, both Mike McCarthy and the Joneses, that they're kind of more just throwing their hands up at this point. So, I'll just say this, and I don't think it's limited just to X I'm on Blue Sky as well. I'm sure anybody who's on any social media. It just seems like any responses that I've seen to any announcement of one way or the other about the situation has been met with just absolute vitriol from the Cowboys fandom.
Yes.
So I guess my point being, I don't really understand these empty calorie updates, other than I guess that they're trying to farm engagement and people that are replying back with a bunch of curse words at Tom Pelissaro for even mentioning the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones in their timelines.
It's weird. This is like the least that I've thought about the Cowboys head coaching search. Because the Cowboys have had several coaches during my lifetime. Mm-hmm. I just feel very indifferent towards it all. To me, I felt the whole time like Mike McCarthy is going to be back. And the only thing that they're debating now is who's the offensive coordinator, who's the defensive coordinator, and how many years is the deal?
Yeah, that
feels
to
like
me. It's like I wish we could sim to the part where we get to the specifics, right? Because it just feels like the McCarthy thing is a foregone conclusion, but which I've already kind of internalized that. I'm ready to look at the next step of, okay, who's calling plays? Who's the defensive coordinator? and to see how I feel about the situation overall at that point. Because right now it's like I'm in a holding pattern.
And that's the way I feel. Now, if we get to Tuesday and McCarthy is eligible to go talk to other teams and the Cowboys can't say anything about it, then I think it gets really interesting. But right now, it just feels like we've been through so many Dallas Cowboy contract negotiations that this is just kind of what they do. They wait to the last minute to get things done, and more often than not, they get them done. I feel the same way.
Last thing, I think we both agree that there's mutual interest in both for these guys to return with each other, right? Who do you think wants it more?
Jerry Jones.
I wonder if it isn't Mike McCarthy, because even though that they have, the way that's been played out, like the fact that they have slow played this, I think may be because they feel like they have options. And if they can't get Mike to kind of agree to what I mean, I think despite what everyone else thinks out there, that they do have options out there, including Kellen Moore and including other things here, which again, not necessarily our choices, but I think they feel like they might have more options than we believe that they feel like they do.
Well,
if that makes sense.
Let me give you the counterpoint on Mike McCarthy, right? We know the Bears are interested. Who was one of the people that came out during midseason and said that McCarthy is a really good coach and the Cowboys would be foolish to get rid of him? Do you remember? It was like a national media. Brady, right?
Brady. Yeah.
Who's running the head coach search in Las Vegas right now, looking for a coach?
Tom Brady. Which, I mean, again, but I guess, I do see that I definitely agree that McCarthy has options beyond the Cowboys for sure. Yeah. I just think that he wants to be here. His family's here. I think he honestly.
Of course, I think if he had his choice, he would prefer to stay at Dallas, right? But I also think he's putting on this little bit of a media blitz to be like, "Hey, pay me what I'm worth because I know what I can get elsewhere.
Exactly. Yeah,
give it to me now, right?"
I guess that's what I mean is that I think that both sides want this, but I think that what I'm getting at is that I think both sides have a limit too. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a point where they both would be willing to move on if they didn't get what they want.
Let me ask you this: who do you think would be more devastated if it doesn't work out?
Because I guess that's what I'm arguing is I don't think that either side would be devastated if this didn't work out. I think both sides would look, okay, cool, and then move on to the next situation that it comes from.
And honestly, maybe then that's what should just happen. Like, if both sides feel like they've got other options out there that they would like to explore, you give it. It's not like this is a team that's only given a coach 1 or 2 years. Like, they gave him 5 years. That's not an insignificant amount of time in the NFL. Maybe just letting things naturally play out the way they play out wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
And maybe that's why they've dragged this out, is because they do kind of want a natural ending. They've seen the talk about what's going on in the locker room and that the players want Mike McCarthy back. And so they're trying to consider that and slow play this, like, hey, we really considered this, but it just didn't work out. As a spin, not to us, but to the locker room.
Correct. Maybe. All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the podcast on YouTube. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Enjoy the college football playoffs. Enjoy the NFL playoffs. And we will see you right back here on Monday.